to infinity and beyond!
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No. I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. Zach Owens here with Johnny Sobchak for another spooky episode. We are getting deep in spooky season and we are staying on theme after talking about Smile, after talking about, I don't even know what else have we talked about. Barbarian semi-recently, talk Hellraiser, all sorts of horror Halloween stuff. We're keeping it rolling with a spooky episode. We're talking Halloween Ends as our review, continuing our House of the Dragon recaps, and since by the time you're listening to it, it will be opening day, we're going to break down a little preview of what to expect from Film Fest 919 kicking off Wednesday of this week and running through the weekend. So it's going to be a good one. Johnny, how are you, my friend?
I am doing well, Zach. I'm doing well. It is, yes, very much the spooky time of year, and we have been keeping up as much as possible. I've been slacking, I think, probably more than you have been, certainly, but I have some interesting things that I have been watching, or at least one big thing in particular. I mentioned it last week, but I did finish watching it, so I'm prepared to give my little, I guess, review. But House of the Dragon, I feel, has really kind of sucked up all my energy, like my excitement in watching.
It's
like,
also just so damn good that like you don't need anything else to go alongside House of the Dragon.
It really is. Yeah, like I feel like during the week I really don't think about anything else, and there's no big movies either. Like I think that's like the other key thing.
Until next weekend, when the hierarchy of power in the DC universe finally changes
forevermore. Yeah, so yeah, not any huge movies. I mean, House of the Dragon's bigger than most movies that have come out this year as far as like buzz, I feel like, and like social media presence and everything. So
right.
Very excited to talk about that. And then of course we also have Film Fest 919 on the horizon. So that's going to be a much needed revival as far as my movie going excitement and interest, I would say.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy how I've been like let me pull up the list this year to see. So I'm at 45 movies for the year, which I guess is like somewhat on track. I mean, back in 2019, I was probably cranking out more than this. But it's crazy to go from 45 to probably like high 50s after this weekend. It's gonna be a whole lot of movies being watched. But it's gonna be a good time. The boys will be together. Me and Johnny we'll get to reunite for a couple movies. We'll maybe see if we can swing a live podcast from Silver Spot Cinema or something like that. But it's gonna be good. Let's get down to business here. What's going on? I'll give you the rundown on a couple things I've been watching. On the TV side of things, some mid-season check-ins, some season finales. First up, we'll talk Andor. We hit the mid-season point with 6 episodes, and we're cruising along very nicely. I know I am not as high on this as our good buddy Jake is, who is claiming this is right up there with House of the Dragon. He's all in on Andor. I think it's very good. I think it's one of the best Star Wars things that has happened. Really enjoying it. The most recent episode finally, like it had been a whole lot of build up. The most recent one finally had this action sequence, the big payoff for what they'd been building up to, which is good at the halfway point. We know this is going to be 12 episodes for 2 seasons, and then that's it. So we're a quarter of the way through the entire show, and it's been cool to see like the first 3 episodes were kind of like its own chapter, and then these 4 through 6 were kind of its own story. And I guess not its own story, but its own chapter. And those two chapters made up one story, I'll say. So it's interesting to see, like, we may not have the same characters throughout. Like, there were a couple deaths in this 6th episode of some of the major players, which is just the cost of the rebellion, I guess, the way that Cassian Andor is bouncing around and figuring out who he wants to be before we see him in Rogue One. But I like that. I like that it's seeming to, okay, we're just gonna like take Cassian as he goes across the galaxy, pops into all of these different places on behalf of the rebellion. I think that's a very cool format to take, rather than some overarching storyline that's being dragged out for 12 episodes. But it's also different from Mandalorian, because there is still like this overarching connectivity, but it's just like different stories, different worlds, but it's not quite to that like serial level that we got with some of the early Mandalorian stuff.
Yeah. That's I really do want to get caught up with it, because it sounds like excellent. And if it's better than Mandalorian, which a lot of people are saying, I really was a pretty big fan of Mandalorian thus far, the first 2 seasons. I just don't feel like, the only thing that it doesn't make me be like, oh my God, I got to see this now, which, has been the case for like a lot of things recently, I would say. So it's not just Star Wars, but like the fact that I'm not a big Star Wars fan, like I haven't been any of the recent stuff, not even the older stuff, like really so much, because I just have not been exposed to it like a lot of other people have. It doesn't make it like appointment viewing, or like I gotta be caught up, or I gotta get this done. Even when I go to watch it, I'll have, multiple episodes to watch, and I probably won't binge it and like just fly through it.
Right. And I mean, that's,
I do want to get
even
around.
for me, like, I'm obviously watching it as we're going now, but with Mandalorian, or with, I guess, some of the earlier episodes of like maybe WandaVision or something, like back before MCU TV got kind of bad. It was like, I'll wake up and watch that in the morning before work. Like, but this is like, okay, Andor Thursday night, maybe I'll get to it Friday, maybe. Like, it's still not appointment viewing in the way that like Thrones is, or House of the Dragon is, but I'm still keeping up with it. So
Yeah.
But speaking of Marvel shows, finished She-Hulk. The season wrapped up with episode 9 last week. And I will say that episode 8 and 9 combined were better than anything that happened in 1 through 7. So there's that. I thought it was it was very silly, which like it's supposed to be. I really did like Tatiana Maslany. Man, I don't know how to say her last name. Maslany. There we go. I really like her as an actress and as this character. I think it's fun. But just didn't really buy into the overall. Like, it was fine. It was entertaining. Some of it was very dumb, but I just wasn't like, oh, this is great. I really am enjoying this. I watched it all. I had moments where I enjoyed it. The Daredevil stuff is cool. I was not a person who was like, I haven't seen the original Daredevil, as you've mentioned. Yeah. So I wasn't one of those people who's like, oh my God, when is Daredevil coming? Like we see from some people online. Yeah. But when he came, it was cool. I enjoyed it. The last episode, I don't know. Do you care at all about this show? Like, should I
go crazy?
Am I allowed to just talk? They took this like very meta approach, where I know we're all aware that during the whole show it was like Fleabag inspired, as they said, breaking the fourth wall, turning to the camera. Yeah. So like this big finale is starting to happen, and things kind of go off the rails, and it's like, okay, the bad guy takes the serum and now becomes a Hulk, and then Bruce Banner shows up, and then Abomination shows up. It was just kind of like your typical like Marvel, like slugfest at the end, and then like she kind of like pauses and is like, wait, are we sure this is the ending we want? And it like goes to the Disney Plus home screen, and she breaks out of the show and goes into the Marvel Assembled show, where it's like the making of, and like pops into that, and then goes through Marvel's campus and goes to meet with Kevin, which turns out that it is like an AI system, not Kevin Feige, and rewrites the story of this show, which I thought was fun. That like, I mean, it worked because of like it wasn't like too cheeky, I guess, but like at the same time, like it was very aware of like, which is kind of weird to me, but it was very aware that they're like, okay, we know our third act suck. We know there's a big CGI slugfest. We know there's a laser beam into the sky somewhere. Like all of the cliches that we've gotten, but it was fine. It was like definitely something different that I wasn't expecting. So that was cool. But overall, on the lower end of my MCU TV shows. But movie wise, keeping the spooky season rolling. Halloween ends. We'll talk about that later. And last night I watched Scream 2, which is coming out for the 25th anniversary 4K Ultra HD Steelbook from Paramount Pictures.
Ooh.
And got that bad boy, popped it in, and had a lot of fun with that. I had seen the original Scream last year for its 25th anniversary. Then I watched the new Scream earlier this year in theaters, and now I've seen Scream 2. So I've seen 1, 5, 2. Now I need to get 3 and 4 to complete the collection. But big fan of that franchise. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I've really think only seen, at least like in full, and like recently I've seen the first one and then the new one. Which I like both of those to varying degrees, but I don't think I've seen the second one. Like I'm not familiar with like the full lore of the franchise, so maybe before the next one comes out. I know there's a new one coming out next year. Maybe I'll get
it's cool to see. I think the order that I've watched them in is actually good. Going like 1, 5, 2, because like 5 was the new one was so like the first one itself is obviously like known for being like revolutionary and meta in the way that it's like self-referential of the slasher genre, and then the new one is like the same way but for like reboot culture and legacy sequel and all of this stuff. And so it was cool to like see that and then go back and be like, okay, well this is how the second one is treating being meta about the formulas that are involved in sequels and going bigger and better and like all of the stereotypes there. So it's been cool to look back on it that way, but I would recommend it. I think across the board I've given all 3 of those movies 4 stars, so I'm equally impressed with all of them so far.
I'll definitely have to do my research, because I think it's like one of those franchises where they're not like, I don't know, I guess really the overall consensus, but I feel like none of them are like said to be like really like that bad. Like they're all kind of just like different and kind of do their own thing, and then there isn't one that like necessarily sticks out. Let's say more than the original, of course, because that's the original, but the rest.
I think 3 and 4 are supposed to be like a slight downturn after 1 and 2, but like let's see, 3 is a 2.9 on Letterboxd and 4 is a 3.3. So like you're right around that 3 range for both of those, which like to me is still like you'll have a good time. It's not going to be great, but it seemed like, you know, versus something like we're talking about today with Halloween, where that's 13 movies deep and you've got some real stinkers and some like best of the best stuff. So pretty consistent, I would say, for the Scream franchise.
Yeah.
Anything that you've been watching, my friend, amongst your busy traveling and weddings and celebrations and such?
So the one thing that I have been up to par on with my viewing is really just Midnight Mass, which I believe I mentioned last week that I was watching.
You did indeed.
So more Mike Flanagan, definitely a horror. I don't know if I would say master, at least from my point of view, but definitely one of the big names in horror over the last few years, last decade. And I think I mentioned I'd seen Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor. Really loved Hill House. I thought it was like pretty amazing overall. Bly Manor, not so much. I was actually quite down on that. That was one where like I can't remember how many episodes that was, but I got into it and then I liked how it was starting off, and then it very quickly like went downhill for me and never recovered. Doctor Sleep, I saw that years ago at this point, but I liked elements of that. I wasn't crazy about it. I thought it was kind of middling, like down the middle, especially compared to The Shining, which might be my favorite horror movie ever. I think it's a masterpiece, and that's obviously kind of a sequel. This I thought was a step above Bly Manor and Doctor Sleep as far as his works, but still not on the level of Hill House, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
I thought that it started off very strong. I thought there's 7 episodes total, or 7 parts. I thought that the first 4 or 5 were very good. And even going in through 6, I think there wasn't necessarily one big moment where I thought things started to slip off. Because I thought even the penultimate part, or episode number 6, I thought that was still, there were things about it that were impressive and like scary and like shocking, that I liked. But for me, I thought that part 7, the final episode, I thought it completely, like, I don't know if I'd say maybe completely, it's a little absolute there, but I thought that by and large, I thought it just completely like missed the mark, and like did not end on a high note, was not the home run bringing it home that I wanted it to be. For a number of reasons. I'm not going to spoil the show. I still would recommend it. I still think you should watch it if you're interested or haven't seen it. Because it's got, definitely has really high, high marks, I think, in some instances, especially if nothing else. I would recommend watching this for Hamish Linklater, who is
Mhm.
I don't know if you necessarily call him the lead. He plays the priest in the show, and he is phenomenal. I mean, genuinely like shaking performance from him. And I have not seen him in anything else before. I didn't even know his name before watching the show.
He was
Uh,
in an old sitcom on CBS in the early
that's right.
2000s called The New Adventures of Old Christine
Yep.
with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. He played her brother. That's the
Wow.
only thing I knew him from.
And it's interesting because he's actually like a nepotism baby, technically. His father, I believe Christian Linklater, Reagan, my girlfriend, was telling me she's an classically trained actor, for anyone who doesn't know, and she was just talking about how his father is like the, not like the king necessarily, but like he's like a huge influence and a huge kind of authority in the acting world, especially when it comes to like voice like training and things like that. And those sorts of things, and that stuff's really interesting to me. It's like very technical, and I definitely don't want to embarrass myself by talking about it, but it's interesting to like thinking of that. It kind of makes sense because his role is so about like vocal, like precision, almost is how I would describe it. Like he gives like speeches. I mean, there's sermons, really, like he's in the church like delivering these kind of speeches, and they are just so like striking, and the way he delivers every line, and his like the pauses he takes, and like the enunciation, like just everything about him is very interesting, and even just his physical presence as well. I was just really bowled over by his performance. So I think if nothing else, it's worth watching for him. There's some other great performances in there as well. The woman, I don't want to mess up her pronunciation for her name either, but the woman who played Bev, or Beverly, in the show, um,
Wild.
she
Psycho.
she is a wild woman, and Samantha Sloyan, I believe, plays the character, and she's someone else who I'd never seen or heard of before. And I thought she was also very, very good, especially in a kind of trickier role in a lot of ways. So I was very impressed with her. I wish she would be in more stuff. I wish Linklater would be in more stuff. So yeah, I think for those two alone, and then there's some spooky stuff. There's some interesting
It
concepts. There's
was
some interesting
it was very
musing.
much like a I have no idea what's going on for a very long time until the end, like last couple episodes, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
I feel like that was what was scariest, is that you were left in the dark for so long.
That is true. Yeah. And I think that's definitely one of the stronger points of the show. Um, but overall for me, like I felt like going into the finale, it had the potential to reach like an amazing high and like end on such an amazing note and be like an overall very remarkable work. And I felt like I had it at like, I felt great about it. And then by the time that last episode was over, I felt very much like it came down like a big step for me. Where I would just say like it's a good, like solid 7 episode kind of like journey and like adventure. So take that for what it's worth. I continue to have a mixed feelings relationship, love hate with Mike Flanagan. I think at his worst, he's very not good, to put it lightly. At his best, he's very effective, very in control, very impressive with his writing and with his technical elements. But Yeah, I'm curious to see what he does next because I know we have, Midnight Club just came out literally this month, I believe, or at late September. And you said that you started it and liked it thus far, just from what you saw.
Only one episode deep still, so I have some work to do over there.
Yeah.
But we've got that, and then we've got I can't remember the title, but the Edgar Allan Poe inspired piece.
Yes.
Which they have like the full cast out for that, and it's a lot of the, Kate Siegel, Zach,
usuals.
Zach, I can't remember his name, Matt Saracen, the main guy, Zach Gilford, I think.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I saw a tweet that was like, if you are tight with Mike Flanagan, then you don't have to worry about work for the next couple years, because he someone like made the comparison to it being like a theatrical like repertoire company. That like he just like has his crew that he brings with him to every show, every
Yeah.
new project, and makes sure that everybody's taken care of. And I think that's very cool. It makes it almost have, I know like Haunting, they were
Yeah.
both like anthology series adjacent, but like it really makes all of his projects feel that way because it is like a lot of familiar faces.
And it's crazy because he's been working like nonstop for like 6 years. Like his output is actually unbelievable. I'm taking a look at his filmography right now. He had Hush, a horror film in 2016 that he wrote and directed. 2017, he had Gerald's Game for Netflix, a film that he wrote and directed for Netflix. Then that was 2017. 2018, he had The Haunting of Hill House, fully 10 episodes written and directed for Netflix. 2019, he did Doctor Sleep, wrote and directed that, which was a movie for Warner Brothers. 2020, full, I think it was 10 episodes of Bly Manor, wrote and directed. Midnight Mass was 21, Midnight Club is 22, and Fall of the House of Usher, the Edgar Allan Poe adaptation, is next year. All that written and directed. So I don't know what this guy is drinking or smoking or what to keep up, but again, it's for me, I feel like the output is hit or miss, but it's still impressive, and so definitely someone to keep an eye on.
Definitely. Well, moving ahead into our next segment here, Film Fest 919. Like I said, by the time you're listening to this on Wednesday, it'll be official opening day of the festival. This is the 5th year that we will be heading to Chapel Hill, North Carolina for Film Fest 919. Started way back in the day, and this is a festival that, you would think maybe, oh, it's just a Chapel Hill like film festival. They've got like one good movie, is it local movies, whatever. But quite the track record of success, Johnny. I mean, our first year there was Roma, there was Green Book, which is like, say what you will, but that was the best picture winner. I'm trying to think what else we had all the way back in 2018.
The Florida Project.
The Florida Project, Boy Erased was there. I remember I saw that the first year. Anyway, great movies. I think I mentioned it last time we talked about this. Very well known for predicting Best Picture, because they had Green Book, they had Parasite, they had Nomadland. Last year was the first year they missed, did not have Coda at the festival, but they did have some big name movies like King Richard, like Spencer, a lot of the heavy hitters there. And this year we are primed for another solid slate. Johnny, I know we're not doing a full preview because just in a couple days from now we will be having our full recap episode where we're talking about everything we saw. But let's lay out what we plan to see for the people. Everything we're planning on checking out, what maybe is most anticipated, any sleeper picks that you have as our awards expert for what people should be on the lookout for. But let's get started here. For me, I am checking out, I believe, 8 movies. I think seven movies. Let me count them out here. We got Devotion on opening night, which is going to be featuring the director. J.D. Dillard will be there. He'll be receiving an award and will be hosting a talk after the movie. I'll be seeing The Inspection. Let's see what else. She Said, Saint Omer, White Noise, Armageddon Time, and Glass Onion, and Women Talking. So I'll be seeing quite a few. Johnny, I know you're coming up on the weekend, so missing a couple days, but still gonna pack in plenty of films. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited this year. They have a good slate, as we've said. I am on my docket. I am going to be seeing the Belgian film Close, which I'm very excited about. That was an award winner out of Cannes Film Festival earlier this year, which looks to be a very heart wrenching, I think, movie to some degree. So hopefully I'm prepared for that. Then we also have Noah Baumbach's White Noise, which I'm really excited about. One of my more anticipated films from the group, just because I loved Marriage Story so much. I think it's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
very different film in a lot of ways, and I think that's been a little bit for like something for people to adjust to coming off of Marriage Story. But I think overall the reception's been quite positive, actually. So I'm curious to see kind of where I fall in that. Women Talking, of course, um, one of the main 3 or 4 films competing for Best Picture potentially could be a potential acting winner. Almost a lock, I would say. A lot of people would say for adapted screenplay wins throughout the season going to the Oscars. So really looking forward to that one. Again, that's going to be another kind of heavier film. But then we also have Armageddon Time, which I believe you're also going to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm looking forward to that. Not so much because it has the biggest buzz, perhaps, but I am a sucker for Jeremy Strong. I absolutely love him as an actor. Anne Hathaway, of course, always a pleasure. And then Anthony Hopkins, again, someone who doesn't usually miss. And then let's see what else we have. Probably my most anticipated film overall is going to be The Banshees of Inisherin. Again, this is probably a film that's going to be in the top 4 or 5 as far as best picture contenders goes. Colin Farrell, a lot of people are saying it might be his best performance ever. He's one of my favorite actors of all time. So I just can't wait to see what he's got, kind of this time around. And also it's a reunion from one of my favorite films, In Bruges, by Mark McDonagh. And that was, of course, Brendan Gleeson and Colin Farrell in the 2 lead roles. So I'm excited to see them back together on screen. Also, Barry Keoghan is in the cast. I've heard good things about him, and he is just having like a crazy run of success over the last year or 2.
He really is.
He had the role in Eternals, which, say what you will about that movie, but an MCU gig's an MCU gig, and for better or worse. And then of course he is the Joker in the freaking Batman movies now. We'll see how big that role turns into. And then he also is going to be in this Best Picture nominated movie, it seems like. So he's on the up and
was
up.
in The Green Knight recently.
He was
for
in
a
the
very small role, but still.
And he's also in he's already filmed, I believe, Emerald Fennell's next film. She, coming off of Promising Young Woman. So that was a Best Picture nominated film, and we'll see what that movie ends up being. But yeah, he's staying busy, booked and busy. I really am liking him as one of my favorite like young and upcoming actors. I think he deserves to be in the same conversations as someone like Timothée Chalamet, for example. Of course, who is a huge star and one of my favorite younger actors as well. So yeah, I'm just really stoked overall, like to get back to the festival, because it does have like this fond memories for me, especially being at college. And of course, like I have my first experience with some of my favorite movies, or like my favorite movies the last few years at least, like Marriage Story, seeing that kind of opening night, and just being like just flattened by how amazing I thought that movie was, and plenty of others as well. Last year I got to see Come On on the big screen, which was a great opportunity, and another movie that was one of my favorites of last year, that laughed, cried. Joaquin Phoenix crushing it. It's just those types of movies that come out every year that maybe not the most people get to see, especially in an actual theater, and you get the opportunity to experience that, and definitely not something to take for granted, because especially for the region, and not just not even just the state, it is one of the more impressive programs that they put together pretty much year in and year out. At this point, it's becoming more and more of a mainstay, I guess you could say.
It definitely is. And like you, super excited to be there, to get to just plop down and watch movies all day long. It's going to be a blast. I'm more basic than you, I would say, with my my most anticipated. I'm a sucker for Rian Johnson and Knives Out. I'm so excited to see Glass Onion. It'll be cool to get to see that on the big screen, because obviously that's going to be a Netflix release. They're doing that 1 week run in theaters, but to get to see this not only a month before that run and 2 months before it comes out on Netflix, but get to see it in theaters as well. Feel very, very elite there. But I will be super excited to be there. I hope that everybody will stay tuned for next week's podcast where we all are breaking it all down. And be sure to stay tuned to our social feeds and our website because we're going to be churning out some reviews, some reactionary content as we're working our way through the festival. But without further ado, I think it's time to head on over to Westeros, Johnny.
Let's get it.
Episode 9, The Green Council. While Alicent enlists Cole and Aemon to track down Aegon, Otto gathers the great houses of Westeros to affirm their allegiance. Now, Johnny, we left episode 8 with extremely high praise for Viserys's last efforts as king, a moving performance from Paddy Considine, and just a very epic all-timer of an episode within the Game of Thrones universe. Now we're here to deal with the fallout. The king is dead, and shit hits the fan. What, I saw some takes that were down on this episode, or not necessarily down, but lower. But I think you and I are both in agreement that it may not have been as high as episode 8, but for me at least, it was right up there with maybe not the emotional weight and the sentiment, but instead just like the storyline, the way the plot moved around, the pacing of this episode. I thought this was a fantastic episode. Just so tense, so quick. Everything that we knew was going to happen. We knew for weeks that Viserys was on his way out, that Otto was plotting, that things were going to pop off when it wasn't a matter of if, it was when, and when happened. This is this was insane. It reminded me a lot of, like, to put this into like a sports metaphor, like when I was working at the Panthers and we fired Ron Rivera as our head coach. It was like we knew it was going to happen at some point. Then it finally happened, and like the media team, you're like jumping into action. You're doing this, you're doing that. We're like, I don't. It was just like so cool to see, like, everybody had their plans in place and they just snapped into action, and we got to witness it all because it felt very much like behind the scenes almost of like all of the scheming and plotting. We're in closed rooms with people having secret conversations rather than so much of this, which has been like out front, in front of large crowds and for the public to know about. So I thought that was a cool twist on this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten too in the weeds as far as like people's, complaints or like their critiques of the episode, which is perfectly fine. But what I think is, and the main takeaway from this episode is that it was a nice window, at least in my opinion, into the Greens and Alicent, especially, who's really the focal point of the episode, and their kind of perspective, or like their feelings, both internal and external, towards each other, about this succession, and like the Aegon basically taking over after the death of Viserys. We got to see Alicent with her father one-on-one, and like really kind of butting heads with him. I would say maybe for the first time, really.
Good for her.
Yeah, good for her. And then also, her one-on-one with Rhaenyra and Rhaenys, rather. I'm gonna start melding names together.
I wouldn't blame you.
But Rhaenys, Alicent Rhaenys one-on-one, I thought that was a great kind of conversation that also was kind of putting a new spin on things and like shifting my perspective somewhat on like what I think of these characters and like what could happen. So I really like that scene a lot. And then also there you have this kind of interesting cat and mouse game that you kind of alluded to, of Aemond and Kristen Cole searching for Aegon, and then you have the twins
Eric and Eric
searching for Aegon as well. They are sent by Otto, and Aemond and Kristen, of course, are sent by Alicent. So I thought that was a fun dynamic. And then of course, like Aegon himself, like, who is he? What is he all about? What does he want? What does he need? And we do get some of that. We have that scene of him in the carriage with Alicent, which I thought was really nice as well. And then of course his coronation, which I thought was an excellent sequence, probably the coolest and like most well done like coronation scene we've ever gotten in this universe on screen, from what I can recall. We certainly got some great stuff with Cersei being coronated, her coronation as the queen, and at the very end of the series of Game of Thrones, we got Sansa and all those sorts of things. But I thought I mean, it's exactly what you would expect and like what you would want out of a peak Targaryen kind of coronation scene. And I thought that was very cool. And then of course it all leads to this big bombastic moment, which I think has been like the most, not even controversial, but like the most discussed or like most analyzed like moment of the episode, which is when Rhaenys to escape, she comes crushing through the floor of the dragon pit and not only of course interrupts the coronation, but also kills a bunch of common folk, and then also intimidates and like prepares seemingly to extinguish the Greens, and of course chooses to not become a kinslayer or a
Could have
kinslayer,
saved us all so much time, man.
and let them live. And then she goes flying away, which is definitely, I mean, it's called House of the Dragon. I think so far it's living up to its name. I mean, I think this sequence, and then also the sequence we got a couple episodes ago with Vhagar, where Aemon claims Vhagar and flies for the first time, I think are two of the top, if not the top two, dragon scenes that we've ever gotten in this world. So props for that. And I think we are probably due for another one, and maybe the biggest show-stopping one maybe next week.
Oh yeah.
It lot to discuss here, of course, but yeah, I think it was overall, it wasn't I wouldn't even say this is maybe a top 5 episode of the season of the 9 episodes we've gotten so far, but I still thought overall it was like very good. I didn't think that it was a big step down or like a bad or even mid-lane episode by any means.
A lot of points that you raised that I want to go back to here, because like you said, there's a ton to talk about. A couple quick hitters, couple comedic moments off the top. We've got all of these names: Daemon, Aemond, Aegon, the other Aegon, Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, whatever. And you finally get a normal name, Eric, but there's 2 of them. One's Eric and one's Auric. And they're identical twin brothers. Like, what are the odds? Come on, George. Throw us a bone here. But I thought they were both very cool to see them in action here. And Eric, I believe with an E, is the one who was basically like the sworn protector of Aegon. And it was cool to see them as they're searching, because Eric, obviously being so close to Aegon for so many years, he knows this monster that he is. We had not necessarily seen it too much. Like, we've seen outbursts, but never like the full extent. We just see him as like this drunk whore, basically, who wants to just like hang out in the brothels and wager on child fighting, and have a good old time and not be king. He doesn't want that responsibility. But this protector of his knows and tries to warn people, like, this is not the king. We don't want him to take power. He's not a good person. So I thought that was very cool. And then we obviously see him be the one to help spring Rhaenys free and set her off on this escape. But shout out to Eric and Auric. The other thing, Larys back in the game, we're getting them feet pics from the queen herself. This was interesting. I was not expecting this, I don't think. But this all kind of ties into, I want to talk about Alicent quite a bit. Because we see her finally like opposing her father. Like, from the very start of the episode, she kind of is shocked to hear that Otto has been plotting this all along, whether or not there was a new message from Viserys about Aegon or not. So it was cool to see her, like you said, butt heads with him a little bit, stand off on her own. And the scene with Larys is obviously like, how can we take an advantage away from Otto so that she has more power. And that leads to supposedly killing the White Worm, Massaria, who is the Lord Varys of these times, the Master of Whisperers. Not convinced she's dead. We did not see a body. So
No,
jury's,
I don't think she's dead at all.
jury's definitely still out on that one. But the fact that the exchange that happened here was that Laris, I guess, has a thing for feet, and she took off her shoes, took off her socks, and showed them toes, and that was the price that she pays for him to do her bidding and kill people. So the way that she knew exactly what to do, so it made it seem like this is something that has happened multiple times before. We obviously know that he has killed on her behalf, even if she didn't know about it, but at some point previously this has happened. This has become a thing, which is interesting to me because she's the queen. She can kind of just demand all this stuff if she wanted to. She's obviously uncomfortable and not into this. This is not a mutual enjoyment, mutual pleasure here. But all of this Alicent talk, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, because this episode really almost like made me rethink this character of Alicent as not necessarily being that awful. Like, she got out of, I mean, I'm still Team Rhaenyra. I'm not a fan of Alicent, but she got out of her father's shadow, out from under his thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And like her motivation this episode, I guess it stems back to your interpretation of the Viserys's dying words. Like, do we think that she genuinely believed that, or was she manipulating the words? Like, I think she definitely heard what she wanted to hear and took it and ran with it. But like, her motivation here is like, I'm getting my son on the throne and doing whatever I can to get him there. But at the same time, she's not like Otto. She's not like, oh, we're gonna go kill Rhaenyra, we're gonna murder her children, we're gonna like get rid of everybody without asking any questions. She's very much like, yes, I'm usurping the throne, but I also want to do it in like the most considerate way possible, if that's a thing.
Yeah.
So like, I still think she has her issues and like does bad things, but it definitely put her in a different light for me as far as like not just being pure evil. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah. When you're talking about pure evil, you're just talking about like Alicent in general, I guess, right?
Yeah, like I mean, like a ton of what she had been doing previously was at her father's urging, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, I would say I've never felt that she's like evil necessarily. Because I mean, she's so horribly warped by everything that's been done to her and like how she's been used and manipulated by pretty much everyone in her life. I mean, you can say what you want about some of these other characters. Otto, it's her father, but he has pretty much manipulated and used her to his own ends from episode 1. As soon as Aemma died, he was pushing Alicent to go and comfort Viserys, to pretty much position her to be his wife. And she was a child, and she had to bear his children, and that involved maybe some not so consensual sex with Viserys, if you want to call it that. We saw scenes of that. It's not something that she enjoyed. Like, it doesn't seem like, I wouldn't say it was like a loveless relationship or like marriage, but it's not something Alicent would have ever chosen for herself at the very least. And so I think she is like kind of a tragic like character in a lot of ways. Now, of course, she does have issues that are flaws, and that doesn't make everything okay that she does. Of course, I think the episode where she stabs and takes a dagger to Rhaenyra is certainly a prime example of that. But she does have comparable to Cersei, she has true like love for her children above all else at least. And we do see her by herself in a room alone with Viserys's body, like weeping. I think there was obviously, even with all the issues that were going on between them over the years, she did have like genuine love for Viserys as a person, maybe even like as a husband or partner. And then when she goes to talk to Rhaenys, like, she has the meeting at the small council and all these other things in this episode. Like, she is almost like naive in how she expects this to play out. She is under the impression that there is a peaceful resolution out
Mhm.
there, that she can like control Aegon, and that she can outsmart her father Otto, and find a way that works. She's trying to like kind of have her cake and eat it too, in some ways, is maybe a good way to put it. So I think this episode, honestly, I wasn't, I mean, I definitely disliked her a lot in some of the previous episodes. Like, I was very much like, I can't stand this lady. Like, she needs to go. Like, she's
Mhm.
horrible. This, I feel a lot differently. I feel like coming out, and I think that is a testament to why I liked the episode, maybe more than others, or like thought that it was a genuinely very good episode, because I think it didn't fully, like, of course, it didn't shift my perspective. I'm not like, oh yeah, let's go Allison, let's go Aegon, let's go Greens.
You're
Or
not suddenly Team Green, are you?
I'm not Team Green, but it's like, I don't think it's, first off, I know Greens versus Blacks, like, it's a very fun like concept, and I think there's some validity to those stances, but like, it is very gray. Like, it is like, and I know that's kind of a trope, or like just kind of cliche at this point, but it is a very mixed like feelings, like on all sides, across like almost every single single character. um you know, I think that Allison benefits the most from this episode, though, because we do get to the inside of her head a little bit, and we get these one-on-ones she has with multiple characters throughout the episode. And I think I come away like feeling like I understand her more, and I do, like, she has like my sympathies in a lot of ways, and she's just trying to make the best of like a shitty situation in some ways, but she is also trying to like take advantage and like, position her son as the king, and also like give herself more power. So it's like it is very like complicated and complex, and I like that. And I think that I am very, very nervous and curious to see, of course, what happens in the final episode, and in the rest of the series, honestly, because I have inklings of things that may happen, or what certain characters are going to go and experience, but like, again, it's almost like my feelings about all the characters in the show, like, it's kind of murky, and like I'm still kind of in the dark in a lot of ways. So I was a big fan of this, and I think it's a good, like, I have seen people compare it to like a two-part season finale almost,
Mhm.
because this one is almost fully focused on the Greens. It essentially is focused on the Greens. Rainey's, of course, is in the mix, but I think
Right.
this I think
The
I think the
fact,
last time, yeah.
the biggest thing we haven't talked about is that there's no Rhaenyra or Daemon whatsoever in this episode, which is obviously a huge change because these have been two major players for the whole time. But like you said, this is all Team Green behind closed doors, as we're laying the foundation for stealing the throne. Um, which, like, obviously sad not to have Rhaenyra, because I love Emma Darcy. I love the character. Everybody loves Daemon. Coming this fall to CBS. Everybody, but it wasn't like a detriment not having them in this episode, because everything was humming along so smoothly. There wasn't like a, man, I really wish we had a Rhaenyra scene in here or something.
Yeah, that's a great point. I totally agree. I think that is definitely something I think I haven't really seen too many folks say that, but I did think of that in passing, like over the last couple of days, like, I love Rhaenyra and I love Damon, but I didn't really, like, I wouldn't say I missed them, or like they were needed in this episode. Like, I enjoyed getting these kind of perspective shifts and getting more insight into the Green side of things. So I think that was well done as well. Like, just being able to take that chance and like find that balance, and not like kind of maybe throw your audience off too much, or like make them wish that these other characters were in it.
Definitely. Before we wrap up our House of the Dragon talk, we've got to do it. Stock up, stock down. Heading into the finale, this could be our biggest stock movement here. Before we head into a undoubtedly long off season between 1 and 2 here. But for me, let's see. Taking a look at the board here, I feel like stock is high on Aegon right now. Definite stock up with him. Not for as a good person or as a fan favorite, but my guy didn't even want it, but he made some power moves this episode, becoming the literal king of Westeros. So not bad for him to be able to climb the ladder like that. And you obviously see at the very end there, before the dragon breaks through, that he's like, oh, I got this crown, I got this sword, I got the crowd cheering for me. Maybe this isn't so bad. And now that he's embracing that, and we know him to be a monster, we could be in for Joffrey 2.0 here. So I feel like that's a serious stock up for him.
Yeah, that's a very good point there. I would agree with that, I think. As far as, man, this is tough. I mean, stock up, I would say, as the episode ends, we have Rhaenys literally rising out of the ground and flying away. She was in a very vulnerable position this episode. She could have been locked away. She could have been even potentially killed if she didn't, decide with the Greens, and she was able to escape. She made a huge statement. She struck fear in the Greens, and she's now escaping with her dragon in tow as well. She didn't have to leave her dragon Melee's behind. She is going to be going over to the Blacks, going to Dragonstone, presumably. And I just thought it was great, like the image of her on the dragon with her armor on and everything.
Yeah, she had a wardrobe change down there too. That was nice.
Yeah, and so she's just a reminder. She is a very, maybe you could describe her as like passive in some ways throughout the season, but I think this was a big statement that she is a warrior. She is an experienced, maybe she hasn't necessarily been in battles, like in real conflict necessarily on the front lines, but she is a dragon rider, and that is, as powerful as a person as you can imagine. And it'll be interesting to see, again, that's someone to keep an eye on going forward. What is their impact in the potential conflict that's going to come? And she's someone that is a very experienced, and maybe she can be a huge benefit to the Blacks if she sides with them, or in a huge pain in the ass to the Greens if she does come kind of back to cause some vengeance.
And we know, or I guess we don't know, the status of Lord Corlys, her husband, still incapacitated, but if she's escaping on dragon to reunite with a potential healing husband, could be some serious stock up there for her. But I will say, on the downside, tough week for allies of House Black, not House Black, Team Black. Lord Beesbury, RIP. Kristen Cole, an absolute unhinged savage. I don't even think he meant to kill him, but he did, and he did not have any remorse.
No.
And Lord, I can't remember the name. I've been Googling it, and I don't know how to describe him to figure this out.
The guy that got hung?
Yes, Westerling.
Yes.
Sir, no. Westerling. Westerling was the Lord Commander, who was able to escape. But
he's gonna be someone to keep an eye on.
Maybe. Yeah, he's in loyal to the Targaryens, and surprisingly was able to escape with his life while stepping down as Lord Commander. But the one, I can't remember the name, but the one who was trying to get out to send word about all of this stuff that was happening, got pulled back in, got hung, and Lord Caswell, that was his name.
Yeah.
But not good for them. Stock down for all of them because they are dead. But I will say one final stock up, as people have noted from the preview and from what to expect for season 2. Stock up for House Stark, baby. We're gonna be getting some Starks. The board was set at Dragonstone, the map of the battle of what the status of this war is, and we saw a little piece moving up to Winterfell, and we know who lives up there. We know the Starks are up there, so we are going to get some beloved Starks in this show at some point. So very exciting to get some more familiarity from the Thrones world up in here, because we know those are some good people you want on your side there.
No doubt.
Any final thoughts on episode 9 as we get ready for a huge week at Film Fest 919 and a huge finale of House of the Dragon?
I'm very excited. I can't wait. I'm very nervous as well, because I'm not totally sure what's going to happen or how this is going to end. I have no doubt it's going to be maybe not a full-blown cliffhanger, but it's going to be a tough wait for season 2. it's not going to be pretty. But we'll have plenty of other great stuff to keep us occupied in the meantime. And I really just hope they take their time to craft because this show, I mean, the potential, it's so strong out of the gate that season 2 and subsequent seasons can be very, I mean, amazing. I would say, like, if you can imagine it being better than this, that's going to be quite the experience overall. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping for a high note. I'm hoping for something that's both satisfying and also leaves us wanting more. Yeah, I was really pleased overall with this episode.
One final note here. I will say this somewhat bucked the trend. Not a trend, but I was expecting more explosive shit to pop off in this, just based on the trend of Thrones episode 9s being like the peak and then 10s being the fallout. Because 9 is Ned Stark, 9 is the Battle of the Bastards, 9 is what else? Reigns of Castamere. So if all we had to lose in this one was Lord Beesbury and not Westerly, I can't even remember his name already, I forgot. Then I think we made it out all right. So there could be some heads rolling next week. But we will continue on with our episode to talk about Halloween Ends. This is the latest and supposed final film in David Gordon Green's Halloween Ends trilogy, or Halloween trilogy. I'm sure it is not the last that we will be seeing of Michael Myers, but for this rebooted trilogy that started back in 2018, it is the end. So I saw this movie over the weekend. Johnny has not seen it yet, so this is going to be just me and Johnny chiming in with some questions, some commentary. But let me lay it down for you. We've got Jamie Lee Curtis, the OG Scream Queen, is back. Andy Matichak, Rowan Campbell, and James Jude Courtney as The Shape. Currently sitting at a 40% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, 57% audience score. So on the lower end of things. My score, as we head into this review, 52 out of 100. So really not particularly high on this. Very average, middle of the road. But a lot of issues that I had with this movie, which we'll get into. But let me lay down the plot here. This is Laurie Strode's last stand. After 45 years, the most acclaimed, revered horror franchise in film history reaches its epic, terrifying conclusion as Laurie Strode faces off for the last time against the embodiment of evil, Michael Myers, in a final confrontation unlike any captured on screen before. Only one of them will survive. I literally copied and pasted that from Rotten Tomatoes, and boy, is that wrong. Like, this is a spoiler review, by the way. Let me throw that out there. This is what we had hyped it up to be. This whole trilogy. They're called Halloween, Halloween Kills, and Halloween Ends. We know it's the end. It's the last confrontation. That's how it's marketed. All of this is about Laurie versus Michael. It's coming down to this final stand. But that's not what this movie is, Johnny. I don't know how much you know about this. I know you've seen Jake's thoughts and Josh's thoughts, who are much higher on this movie than I am. But as a Halloween movie and a movie that is meant to be the conclusion of Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers, this does not work. There's a big twist in, like, not even like, it's not like a last minute twist or like a third act twist or anything. It's like the whole movie is a twist, and I'm torn on it because on one hand, I appreciate the fact that, like, they went for this twist. I respect it for taking chances. It was a way to make sure that this movie is not another, just Michael Myers walking slowly down the street, slashing people up. Yeah. They put their own spin on it and took it in a new direction. But at the same time, in the third film of a trilogy that, like I said, is meant to be the big ending to wrap everything up, I just don't think it works because there's been so much buildup for, from the original back in 1978 to these two films preceding this. And now, like, we're twisting away from this. There's a change, a reverse in character arcs. I'm speaking vaguely, but I have to, like, lay it out, I guess. Because basically this movie is not a Michael Myers movie. This movie is about Laurie. So we open with this teenager named Corey. He's a babysitter a very successful student, off to be an engineer, study engineering in college. And it's Halloween night, a couple years after the most recent Michael Myers incident. Michael has vanished. The town seems to be healing, and he's babysitting for this child. The parents go out for a party or something, and the kid is just kind of like giving him some trouble. He's just being kind of a little dick, and the kid like then runs around the house, like plays hide and seek almost, and gets Corey locked in a closet. And Corey's kind of freaking out, getting upset. He's trying to get out. He kicks the door, keeps kicking it, and then it finally pops open, hits the kid. He stumbles backwards, flips over the banister, and falls down like 2 floors into like the foyer, and just goes splat and dies in the house. And it's like right as the parents are coming home from their night out, and so they see basically what looks like Corey killing him. They accuse him of murder. And so this is like all within the first 5 minutes. This is like the opening, the cold open. And then we flash to like a couple years later, and Corey didn't get charged with anything, but like, you know, his name's been run through the mud. He's like the talk of the town as like being a child killer, even though it was like all incidental, no issues. Like his bright future is now gone. He's working at like a junkyard mechanic shop. But so this movie's like all about Corey, and then he comes into Laurie's life by basically those two meet, and she like knows like, oh, he's that kid, and he knows her as being like the Michael Myers woman. And she sets him up with her granddaughter. I don't know, did you see Halloween Kills, the second one, or no?
Hell no.
So for the record, I really liked the first one of these. I thought it was a great like reboot, bringing the franchise back. Yeah. Second one was like not great. I can't remember what I rated it, but I remember not liking it. It was just very nonsensical. It was very much about like the mob culture, like the woke mob, not woke mob, the like the people the people of Haddonfield tonight. Yeah, evil dies tonight. The people like running over the town because of like paranoia and hysteria. But so
which could have been interesting.
Which could have, and this could have been interesting too. I think this would have really worked if it was like the first one and like rebooting a new Michael Myers, a new Halloween. Right. But because this is the third one, that's my main reason that it doesn't work, is because we were advertised, and I'm not like a huge diehard Halloween fan that's like, I'm a salty kid because I didn't get what I want. I'm not like Last Jedi-ing this, but like I just don't think like logically it doesn't work to like pivot so much from your core characters, what this franchise is built up to, in the finale. But anyway, the whole premise is that like Laurie's granddaughter Allison and Corey begin dating, and it's like a real Romeo and Juliet type thing, that they fall for each other very quickly, and they're like, we want to get out of Haddonfield, we got to leave. But at the same time, Corey gets jumped by the bullies, which are marching band kids at the high school. And he like gets thrown off a bridge, which is kind of wild. But when he lands, he's like by a sewer pipe, and then gets dragged into the sewer by Michael Myers, who has been living down here for 4 years, just like in hiding, recovering, I guess, whatever. Michael doesn't kill him. They like have this moment where they like stare into each other's eyes, and it's like almost like the passing of evil from one to the other. And so like Corey kind of picks up the mantle and like does some murdering, almost in like a You style, like the Netflix show You, where like Joe is killing for love, to like make life easier for his love. And so like Allison is a nurse, and she isn't getting a promotion, so like unbeknownst to her, Corey goes and murders the doctor she reports to, and the nurse that is like due for a promotion, who got the promotion instead of her. But it's just like he goes on a killing spree. Michael Myers is still there, and he is a killer. He gets Michael to kill a couple people for him. And so they're just like this, they're not really working together, but they're like cohabitating as murderers. But like Michael is getting blamed for everything because like they just think Michael Myers is back. But Lori like sees this evil in Corey and is like trying to get Allison to realize it, the granddaughter. Allison is like, you're just paranoid, like you don't know what you're talking about, blah blah blah. But that's how, like, it's literally 50 minutes in this movie before Michael Myers shows up.
That's nuts. That is.
And then we have a long stretch without Lori, as it's focusing on Allison and Corey. But then finally, like, all of that is happening, and it's kind of like, okay, Corey's like devolving into this like evil being. But then like the finale comes back to, okay, Corey gets killed, and then Michael and Lori have their standoff, and Lori defeats him. So like, it was kind of weird. I know Jake has talked about like the ending being like having to fit everything like that the franchise needed to have to conclude in there. So just like a weird, again, I like the idea of it. He made the premise, or the comparison Jake did, of like a vampire movie where like, okay, it's like this person who's like figuring out like these new, like they're like descending into evil and like figuring out this new side of themselves and like feasting on people, whatever.
Yeah.
And I thought this is like a very cool premise, but it just doesn't work because of the time that it's coming in this trilogy. So I'll get off my soapbox now. I've rambled for a long time, but I think it had potential, just not at this time. And as a result, I think that the movie that it is in the first 2/3 and then the finale that we get don't work well together, and it just makes for an underwhelming, messy conclusion here. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if you have any questions you need answered, any input or insights, but I think that this was, I think that, I don't even know how I know Halloween, the original, is obviously, I've only seen the first one and then these three. I haven't seen like 2 through, I don't know, 10, 11, whatever they are.
Well, I think they kind of retcon, my understanding is they kind of retconned it so that
that's all you need. These 4 are like the canon. But I mean, the first one, 2018, was obviously the best of these 3, and then I really don't know how I would rank kills and ends. They're about the same for me, but
well, this is why, I mean, I'm not even a huge fan of the original. I think it's a great like slasher film, and obviously it's very iconic and kind of almost like a template for a lot of the slashers that followed, but it's, you know, I don't think that every horror movie needs to turn into an endless franchise, and I feel like this is what has happened, and I get why it happens, but
right.
I don't.
I mean, that was the thing with like the 80s.
Watching any of
the
these.
80s, you know, I have the Friday the 13th 8 movie collection. I have like there's 30 Halloween movies. There's like all of the Nightmare on Elm Street. Like in the 80s and 90s, it was just like, yeah, we can make another sequel. People will show up for it. So
right.
That was just the way it went. But I think that now we can have a break from Michael Myers for a while until they inevitably reboot it again.
Yeah, it's inevitable. And I think maybe it would be good. I would say I could imagine them, and maybe hopefully they'll go this route. Like wait until Jamie Lee Curtis is like too old to do any more of these. Like, you know, maybe 5-10 years down the line, and then just like do something if they do it, I'm sure they will. Just do something completely separate from this Laurie Strode character, and like then maybe at least that kind of baseline story, and then just have Michael Myers do something different.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about like how can you do Halloween without Michael. Like Michael and Laurie have been so synonymous with each other. It'll be I totally agree with you that I think they can like take this character and just start over. But that's Halloween Ends. Thank you for tuning in to this episode, for tuning in week in and week out. We appreciate your support and would not be able to do it without you.
Absolutely. Thank you again for tuning in and supporting the show and the website, of course. To stay tuned on everything that's coming your way, especially as award season gears up, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. That's where we post all of the episodes and a bunch of other good content, and that can all be found at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to come back next week for our recap of Film Fest 919 and the House of the Dragon finale. We'll see you then.